fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
If we are to survive as a nation of laws and democracy, this can never happen again.
The committee believes that more than sufficient evidence exists for a criminal referral of former President Trump for assisting or aiding and comforting those at the Capitol who engaged in a violent attack on the United States.
President Trump lit the flame. He poured gasoline on the fire.
President Trump sat in the dining room off the Oval Office, watching the violent riot at the Capitol on television.
I was becoming increasingly concerned that we were damaging his legacy.
What did the president say in response to what you just described?
Nobody will care about my legacy if I lose, so that won't matter. The only thing that matters is winning.
The committee has developed significant evidence that President Trump intended to disrupt the peaceful transition of power under our Constitution.
No man who would behave that way at that moment in time can ever serve in any position of authority in our nation again. He is unfit for any office.
Jill Wine-Banks is a former Watergate prosecutor and has been following this investigation closely. Jill Wine-Banks, before we talk about the Select Committee's recommendations, can you reflect on what we've learned from the committee's hearings? What picture does the evidence paint of what happened in the lead up to January 6?
If you're talking about all 10 of the hearings that they had, we learned a great deal. They did a very well choreographed presentation of facts, and they laid it out by a variety of acts that were all part of an overarching conspiracy to undo the results of the election. So they talked about the pressure on the vice president to do something he did not have any legal authority to do. They talked about the pressure on state legislatures. They talked about the call into Georgia to get the Georgia Secretary of State to find 11,780 votes, which was one more than he needed to win that election. And so they went through each of the different aspects of the action, not just the violence on January 6th, which of course his speech promoted, his invitation to Washington promoted. So there was the incitement of an insurrection in the violence of the 6th, but what it showed was that there was a long-running plan to do this, and that Donald Trump was at the head of it.
The committee's deliberations have been repeatedly characterised by Donald Trump as a partisan witch hunt, but the committee notes that the majority of its witnesses were 46 Republicans, including key members of Trump's inner circle. So how important has this been in balancing those claims of partisanship?
I think it's a very important point, is the evidence did not come from Democrats. The evidence came from those who knew what was going on, and those are the people who were inside the White House, people who were inside the campaign. And so it's always more easy to convince a jury of the credibility of a witness if they're testifying against their own interests, and if there is no partisan wrangling. And when it comes to the referrals and the Department of Justice is an independent agency and will act based on the law and the facts and their analysis of whether the law and the facts line up to give them a case that they can bring where they will get a jury convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he is guilty, and so that there will be a conviction, and a conviction that will be sustained on appeal.
The committee's findings have no legal status, but their importance must lie in the transparency that they've provided to the public. As a prosecutor for the Watergate hearings, could you comment on the way the inquiries into Watergate and now January 6 reflect a change in US politics in the intervening decades?
During Watergate, there were 3 networks and they all had the same facts. Now we have a lot of social media, a lot of cable channels, and they don't have all the same facts. So that people can and have chosen to believe things that are made up, that aren't real. And they don't bother to look at what's the truth of this? And that's a very, very big difference. In terms of what the committee did, they did an excellent job of presenting facts and to presenting them from people who were from the Donald Trump support group, which again, I think makes it even more credible. But in terms of whether it will have any impact on the people who are loyal Donald Trump supporters, when Donald Trump keeps saying it's a fraud, it's a fake, it's a witch hunt, I don't think those people will be swayed. But there are enough independents and enough Republicans who have seen the facts and the truth. We've had juries in America that have convicted Trump supporters because they saw as a juror that their obligation was to base the decision of guilt or not on the facts presented in the courtroom. And once you get to that, then people are saying, well, I really like Donald Trump, but I saw the evidence and they're guilty. And that's what happened with Richard Nixon. The Republicans are the ones who went to him and said, if you do not resign, you will be convicted in the Senate on the charges of impeachment that the House has already voted. So that's why he resigned and left office.
The unanimous decision to recommend the Department of Justice charge Donald Trump with 4 federal crimes isn't a complete surprise, but what's your expectation of what might happen now?
The Department of Justice will take very seriously the referral, but more importantly, they will take very seriously the evidence that they're given. And they're going to be given, a lot of evidence. I mean, we're talking about over 1,000 witnesses that have been interviewed, many documents that have been gathered. And that's what the important thing is. They will also be looking to make sure that there aren't inconsistencies between what a witness who testified before Congress and a witness who testified in a grand jury said, because that is one of the ways that you lose a trial, is if there's inconsistent statements, either between the same witness or even with different witnesses. So those will be things they'll be looking for in this broad spectrum of evidence.
Well, what do these referrals mean for others like Rudy Giuliani who haven't been targeted this time around?
It's hard to say who all will be referred. And I'd be surprised if Rudy Giuliani isn't referred at least to a bar association, although in fact, of course, he's about to be disbarred anyway. He had a hearing already and it did not go well for him.
Jill Winebanks, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.